This is 1 week of progress on my game. My name is Gabby and I'm making a first-person shooter story game where you the player have abilities that you can upgrade and use to fight enemies. And here is how my game went from this to something like this. I'll be covering a bunch of steps today, including these, of the features I implemented in my game, so let's get started. The first day was just planning everything, so I created multiple documents with the story of the game. I also created mood boards of inspirations, and of course the typical Trello board to keep track of tasks. I also set up a Unity project and made sure that every Git commit had detailed descriptions. On day 2, I really needed to decide the art style of the game. I ended up going with low poly because I'm not good at modeling and this will be easier. Plus, I really like the way it looks. I also made the choice of making the player have arms, and instead of modeling it myself because last time it looked bad, I opted for using this pack here that has some really nice low poly arms and animations. I will also be using certain scripts, changing others or deleting some from this pack to act as a base. I made some alterations to the player arms and created my own textures and materials, and this is what we have. It looks really good and already much better than my previous FPS games. At this point, I spent an entire day working on this movement system. It was a combination of scripts I previously made, new ones, and some from the pack mentioned earlier. Overall, I went for a very simplistic controller. Walking, running, jumping, and crouching are the only movement methods. I didn't want this to turn into one of those fast-paced movement games with wall running, as I'd rather have the player focus on the combat. The entire system revolves around rigid bodies. I wanted it to be physics-based so that applying forces like knockback is easier, and I personally prefer it. But before we continue, this video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot recently sent me this desk, and here is some information and my honest opinion about it. This is the E8 standing desk plus the walnut desktop. The desk itself was surprisingly easy to build and only took 30 minutes with breaks included. The base of the desk is super sturdy, meaning that you don't have to worry about anything breaking. It has an included cable management tray as well, which makes it look that much cleaner. And of course, this is a standing desk, meaning that you can adjust the height with this controller here. The range of the desk is 60 to 125 centimeters. The controller here is touchscreen and includes 4 programmable buttons that allow you to set just the right height, either for standing, sitting, or even lying down. On the FlexiSpot website, you have a very long choice of desktop colors. In my case, I went with black walnut, and you can also choose your size. This is an 140 by 70 centimeter one. The desk has other features like an anti-collision system, low noise level, and can hold a lot of weight, 125 kilograms to be specific. But genuinely, this is a really awesome desk that lasts a while. You can see it's really good quality and it just feels really good to work on. So if you would like to grab one for yourself or look at any other product, as FlexiSpot has an up to 33% sale going on between the 22nd and 26th of May, I will leave a link down in the description below and a pinned comment. Thank you FlexiSpot, now let's continue. Next up, I wanted to implement weapons. I figured just having abilities as a combat source was a little lacking. I settled on having 2 weapons, a pistol and a melee weapon. The melee weapon right now is just a random temporary model. I also implemented an animation to it, and some basic SFX, plus this VFX swipe. Mechanically, there is nothing in place, but once I start introducing enemies, I will work on its functionality. For the pistol, I created this model in Blender. It went through different iterations until I finally settled with this. I tried adding some wires and tubes to make it more sci-fi looking, and eventually created some materials and textures, with this being the final look. Compared to the model in Blender, I think it looks really cool. And you may notice I also added an ammo counter. This is pretty popular in a lot of games, and I personally really like it. And to make it a little bit more unique, it will change colour from green to red based on the amount of ammo remaining. These wires will also change colour to sort of suggest that they're linked to the ammo counter. I went back into Blender and also created a silencer for the pistol, mainly because I think it looks really cool, but also later down the line I will be implementing upgrades for the weapons, and this will be one of them. Mechanically wise, the pistol is very simple. I create this line called a raycast from the player's position forwards to the camera center, and once some input is detected, I will summon a shot at the end of the raycast. With some animations, camera shake, VFX and SFX, it looks really promising. Be aware that all of the visual and sound effects are still work in progress and prototypes, so this won't be the final look. Day 5 and 6 I spent working on the entire ability system. I went through a few prototypes because it's super important to make this efficient. Because the player will have multiple abilities, I don't want to just hard code everything, I'd rather create an entire ability system. That way throughout development, if I'm not exactly happy with an ability, I can easily create a new one. I will probably continue changing the system until I am 100% happy with it, but here it is. At the moment I only focused on one ability, and that's a dash. So the first step of making this dash was just implementing the main mechanic. Essentially, the dash is just like jumping. We want to add force to the player, but rather than in the y-axis, we want to do this in the player's camera facing direction. This was fairly simple to set up because, as I mentioned, it's just like jumping. I essentially just copied all the code and changed the mechanics ever so slightly. But anyways, we can now dash. I implemented a cooldown too and created some rules around that. So now it's not super broken and you can only dash when certain criteria are met, like the player isn't meleeing, jumping, etc. At the moment you can only dash when you're grounded, so there is no upwards dashing. However, I may change this later on when I test this mechanic in an actual level. Now the way my ability system will work is each ability will have 3 phases. Each phase will change the mechanics of the ability while still keeping it fairly similar. So, each phase of the dash will still be a dash, but something will be changed. In this case, the first phase of the dash is just the basic simple one that you just saw. But the second phase allows the player to slow down time. Let me explain. While holding the dash button, time will slow down. During this time, the player can freely rotate and change the direction of movement, or simply have a breather. Once the button is released, the dash will continue. And to make it less broken, I added a timer during the slowdown period, so that if the player doesn't release the button, the dash will occur once it reaches 0. And to illustrate this timer, I added these 2 loading bars on the side that slowly tick down. The idea is that this will allow the player to dodge bullets, abilities, and skill shots more easily, or simply allow them to take a little bit of time to think what the next move is. I still need to think of a third phase or a second one for the dash, depending on what stage I decide to make this. Apart from the phases, each ability will also have stat upgrades. This will upgrade the ability stats like damage, range, cooldown, etc. At the moment the dash is looking a little bit boring, so I added some polish, resulting in this as the final look. And here is how I did it. What I did is create a new camera that renders only a specific layer, and then I created some particles that I put on that layer. I also created a custom post-processing volume that has some animations that make it fade in and fade out. Apart from that, I also changed the camera FOV and player animation and a sound effect. At the moment it's one sound effect, but it's already set up to include multiple different sound effects and it will randomly choose a different one. Now this is still work in progress, but let me know what you think. I also went through and made some UI to show the player their abilities. At the moment you can only have 4 abilities, but later on I may change this to more. And for reference, each ability will have a different icon for each phase, making it a little bit more unique. And while the ability is on cooldown, the alpha opacity of the icon will also change, notifying the player that it's on cooldown. So that is everything that I did this week. I plan to continue devlogs, just not weekly, and update you guys on the game. Also, very soon I will be releasing prototypes of the game for you guys to try out, so look out for that in future videos. If anybody has any suggestions, then leave a comment down below, I will greatly appreciate it. And check out FlexiSpot with the first link in the description or pinned comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!